Hello everybody, Shrouded Hand here. My last video was about some teenagers that found a dead body whilst using the Randonautica app. I thought it might be a good idea to try it out for myself. A few people in the comments also asked me if I was going to do this, so here we go. I called up my friend Kogan and he said he was up for a little Randonautica adventure as well. I thought it'd be a good idea to do it at night, it might be a bit more interesting. This was just before the pubs reopened, so the streets were eerily quiet, but there were still enough shady characters around to possibly make things a bit more interesting. So, what would we find as we explored the dark alleys and the back streets of Newcastle upon Tyne? Before I start, I just want to say this isn't meant to be a promotion for the Randonautica app. I'm not being paid by them to talk about it or anything like that. I'm going to talk a bit about the theory behind this app, so if you want to skip straight to the randonauting action, then go to the timestamp on screen now. So I've been interested in the subject of chaos ever since I read The Dice Man by Luke Reinhardt. The idea that random chance can have the power to change your life is an interesting idea. I even did a video on this subject a few years ago called The Paranormal Secrets of Coincidence and Synchronicity. As I said in that video, in a chaotic world things don't happen in a uniform manner. For example, when you bake a fruitcake, the fruit doesn't distribute itself evenly throughout the cake, it gets clustered together. Some places have more fruit than others, and in the same way, events in our life tend to cluster together. This is why we get strange coincidences. All through human history, people have tried to use this to their advantage, employing synchronicity to influence an outcome in their lives. To take a more skeptical look at this phenomena, I recommend a book called The Luck Factor by Richard Wiseman. He studied people who considered themselves to be naturally lucky. He found that these people do varied things with their lives. They visit different places, they talk to different people, and by doing so they come across more opportunities that will benefit their lives. On top of this, they also have a positive mindset where they believe in their own luck. When an opportunity presents itself, they're more likely to take it because they believe it will have a positive outcome. It could be that by performing magical rituals, it does the same thing. You take time out of your day to perform some magical rite and you break the mundane cycle of your everyday life slightly. It puts you on a different chain of events where you're more likely to come across the things that you desire. Belief in the magic also puts you in a positive frame of mind and makes you more likely to pursue the things that will help you achieve your aims. Whether or not you believe in the magic, or if you want to take a more skeptical approach, it doesn't really matter if the results are the same. The Randonautica app works with a lot of the ideas that I'm talking about here. It works by generating random points on a map, and then it looks for areas where these points are clustered together. These places are called attractor points. Supposedly these are areas that have high occurrences of synchronicity, and according to the app they may have been influenced by human thought. Alternatively, there are void points where the least amount of random points occur. These are thought to be probability blind spots, areas that may be interesting to visit just because of the lack of coincidental clusters. By visiting these points, you're breaking the pattern of your everyday life. You're putting new patterns into action that may lead to interesting outcomes. I decided to meet up with Kogan at the Castle Keep in Newcastle city centre. This is supposed to be the most haunted building in Newcastle, so it seemed fitting to begin our spooky journey here. Apparently, the more points you visit, the more likely it is that unusual and interesting things will happen, so we plan to visit a number of points over the course of the evening. The app asks you to set an intention for the journey and focus your mind on it as it generates the attractor point. My intention for the entire night was to find something interesting for a YouTube video, so let's hope it delivers the goods. The first point it generated was over the other side of the river, somewhere beneath the Redruff Bridge. Annoyingly, the point was right in the river, meaning we couldn't actually get right up to it, but we decided to get as close as we could along the river's edge. We walked across the high-level bridge and down onto the quayside, admiring the local art and looking for significant messages among the writing. Once at the location, the first thing we saw were the flowers on the railings. The Redruff Bridge is a suicide hotspot, so we were probably standing at a place where a lot of people have took their own lives. There was also what looked like blood on the floor, or maybe somebody just dropped their ice lolly, I wasn't sure. We looked around for anything else significant but didn't see much. Interestingly, there were a few herons flying over the attractor point. According to this website, the heron symbolises stillness and tranquility, and how these two things are needed to recognise opportunities. I have to admit, being here on the riverside, it was very still and tranquil, but whether or not there were any opportunities to spot, we didn't, and it was time to move on. The next point generated was a void anomaly in the Ouseburn area. We crossed the River Tyne once more on the Millennium Bridge and headed up the Ouseburn. It's a smaller river that leads through the city. By this point it was getting dark quickly. Although the pubs were still closed, there were small groups of people drinking in dark corners. At one point as we walked along the river, a group of them followed us, but our paths diverged at a junction. The Ouseburn is lined with mysterious and psychedelic street art, and it took on an eerie quality in the darkness. I particularly like this Lewis Wayne type cat pasted under a bridge. The walk took us into some abandoned looking street where a lone dog watched us from a window suffused in red light. The anomaly point turned out to be down a very dark and entirely featureless alleyway. We looked around for anything interesting, but there didn't seem to be anything here. Someone had painted the word skip on the wall. Perhaps it was informing us to move on. I began to think that maybe this journey was more about the walk between the points rather than the points themselves. The app seemed to now be having trouble finding new attractor points, so it generated a pseudo point, whatever that means. The pseudo point was a random side street near to the town hall. On the way there we passed many more street drinkers, so in order to fit in we picked up a few cans for ourselves and drank in earnest. Once again this new point was pretty boring. The walk to it provided a lot more interesting sights and messages. Perhaps if we'd practiced some heron-like tranquility we might have discovered something more significant, but as far as I could see it was just another empty street corner like any other. We quickly generated a new point. Again the app was having trouble finding anything and it generated another pseudo point, but this one at least promised to be a bit more interesting. It was right in the middle of Lees's Park near to a lake. By now it was getting pretty late, so we set off in a last-ditch attempt to find something of note. The park itself seemed quite inviting at first. The paths leading into it were brightly lit and well maintained. However, we quickly ran out of streetlights, and as we neared the pseudo point we were plunged into pitch darkness. At various places we could hear voices and movement, but nobody came forward to confront us, thankfully. The anomaly point itself was once again fairly nondescript, a bare path between some trees. If there were any messages or symbols here for us, it was too dark to see them anyway. Even the night vision camera had trouble illuminating the darkness. We decided to head for the water's edge. Maybe we'd find a suitcase there or some other grisly surprise. Sadly, no such luck. There was a bat circling around our heads for a while and I tried to film it, but it wouldn't show up on camera. We managed to alarm 2 ducks, who seemed very put out by our presence at that time of night. Similar to the heron, I found a website that says duck symbolism is reminding you to take notice of your surroundings because there is a new opportunity available to you. Well, whatever opportunity was there, we definitely missed it. By now it was getting close to midnight and we'd been walking for hours. We decided to call it a night and headed home. So for the next part, you're definitely going to think that I set this up. I promise you that this genuinely happened, and I don't know who this person is. I'd gone out with the intention of finding something interesting to film, and the night had been fairly fruitless. At this point we were walking along the street on our way home. It wasn't any place that Randonautica had sent us. But then again, if we hadn't visited that last point, we wouldn't be walking this way to get home. So I guess in a way the app did lead us here. So we were walking past this indoor car park and we heard a strange repetitive banging coming from within. We thought it might be someone trying to break into a building, so we decided to investigate the sound. We approached one of the grates that looks into the car park, but my camera wouldn't focus on anything, so we had to kind of sneak around the outside of the building until we found an entrance. Now bear in mind that the next thing I'm going to show you was happening at midnight in a deserted car park. So at that point the guy turned around and looked at us. To be honest, he didn't look very threatening and he wasn't chasing after us. We'd had a couple of beers by then and I was in a bit of a silly mood, so I just ran away laughing, saying he was chasing us. Looking back, maybe I should have stuck around and asked him what he was doing. Perhaps this was a missed opportunity to learn something interesting. Then again, there was something weird about him. We could hear that repetitive bouncing noise from really far away, and it continued the whole time we were walking towards the building. He was just facing the shutters alone, bouncing the ball at midnight. He was so absorbed in what he was doing that we were able to walk right behind him without him noticing. Perhaps this isn't the kind of guy that I should be striking up a conversation with. Either way, I guess we did find something interesting to film, and maybe it's more interesting if we leave it as a mystery. Who was the ball bouncing man and what was he doing? I suppose we'll never know. In conclusion, it was an interesting night. Not much seemed to happen right up until the end, and that was when we'd given up on trying to randonaut. Whether or not the app had any kind of mystical influence over the proceedings is uncertain. I think if you walk around a city centre at night for long enough, you're bound to find something interesting anyway. Thanks to Kogan for coming along for the ride. I'll put a link to his channel in the description, so go give him a follow. Thanks to everyone supporting the channel on Patreon and PayPal. Your help is highly appreciated. If you'd also like to help keep the channel running, then check out the link in the end card or buy some of this high quality merchandise. Anyway, let me know what you think of this kind of video. I've been trying to think of something to do with the night vision camera during the lockdown, as a lot of activities are limited. Getting out into the real world is a bit of a break from the usual videos, and I like to mix it up now and then just to keep things interesting. If you've got any ideas for other things I can try out that are similar to this, then leave a suggestion in the comments and I'll check it out. Thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.